Should God come first? Well, this is a good question, actually, and Christians and Muslims are facing this question full on now, and I want to explain why. First, by reading some words of a London Islamic scholar, Sokil Abu Alia, who's just written a really good brief article, which I just want to share with you. And then I want to come to the trials and tribulations of Christian leaders in Britain. And the problems and issues are pretty much the same, in my view. So coming back to the Muslim comment first, he writes, this is Sokil Abu Alia writes recently, "Be a God pleaser, not a praise chaser. Being worried of what others think is a blank check for mental torture or torment. A man's reputation," said John Milton, he's an English poet, "is what other people think of him. His character is what he really is." There's distinction there. "It's natural to want acceptance. No one likes being thought ill of. But it is simply not possible to please everyone, to be liked by everyone all the time. Someone will think something negative about you, and there's nothing that can be done about it," he writes. It's very true, that's very true. "Today, more than ever before, too many people spend too much time living under the tyranny of what people think, and nowhere is this more so the case than on social media. Our current narcissistic selfie culture and online approval seeking have significantly contributed, especially in the young, to mass anxiety and a mental health crisis." It's very sad what he's writing. "Sadly, huge levels of angst are being nurtured as people anxiously anticipate, crave or obsess over the Instagram, Facebook or Twitter likes, or the lack of, on their latest picture, post or tweet. Throughout history, people have invented various ways to gauge personal approval or demonstrate their social standing, but none have been as potent as the social media like button. It comes, however, at a huge collective cost. Currently, there's a form of approval seeking that specifically impacts us, Muslims." And this is where the writer really gets to the heart of the matter here. And this is where Christians also and other traditional faith communities have a problem. "The need to fit in and find acceptance in the Western liberal democracies wherein we live and which most of us consider home. If the discussion about us isn't about terrorism, then it's usually about the question of integration and whether our growing numbers will weaken national identity. The prime concern being the extent to which Muslims and their socially conservative religious values fit into an increasingly unsympathetic and xenophobic liberal society." This is very true. And then he says, "The desire to fit in and find acceptance can be very powerful indeed." And this is, for me, I think it's a really underestimated fact, actually. The collective pressure to fit in and not to rock the boat, not to think outside of the box, not to say anything socially unacceptable. And he continues, "As demands for Islam to reform intensify, so do the temptations to water down its less palatable sacred norms, so as to appease the monoculture and yield to its ways." He doesn't actually list what these sacred norms are, but I can imagine, the Quran talks about mankind or human beings made as male and female. So there isn't great diversity, it's just two genders, for example. Or the Quran's teaching on certain sexual minority lifestyles, shall we say. Our writer continues, "It therefore takes a certain degree of God-given wisdom and a fair share of God-given courage to function as healers." Interesting choice of word there, healers. "But only a small amount of cowardice to act like frightened eulogists. The Quran says, 'Whoever desires honour should know that all honour belongs to God.'" That's this 35th surah, ayah number 10. "We are told in one hadith, 'Whoever seeks God's pleasure at the expense of man's displeasure shall win God's pleasure, and God will cause men to be pleased with him. Isn't that ironic? But whoever pleases men by displeasing God will have earns God's displeasure, and God will cause men to become displeased with him. That's Ibn number 276, isn't it? It's a paradox there. So if you seek God's pleasure at the expense of popular approval, you'll get God's good pleasure, and then God will cause men to be pleased with him. But if you do the opposite, you'll displease God and you'll lose men's approval as well. So fascinating. For Muslims, whatever we do or desire to accomplish in life, it must ultimately serve the glory of God. As for being shaded from mental torment and attaining inner peace, this comes, he says, from ignoring the judgments of others. But this is only possible when one has sound confidence in the judgments of God. We ask Allah for safety and well-being. So that's a marvellous article. With a few tweaks, it could actually be said by many Christians I know as well, because the principles that he enunciates can apply to people of all faith. And I'm reminded of the news recently, just 2 days ago, I think, when the former Bishop of Rochester in England, Dr. Michael Nazir Ali, he was originally born in Pakistan, explained the reasons behind his decision to leave the Church of England and become a Roman Catholic. And he's probably going to be ordained a Catholic priest soon. And writing in the Daily Mail, I don't normally quote the Daily Mail, but it seems pretty okay on this account, Dr. Nazir Ali said he had to leave because the Church of England as an institution seems to be losing its way. And he said, quote, "The Catholic Church has its share of problems, but the faith and values are those that I also hold and which I feel are being eroded in the Church of England. It might have been easier at the age of 72, he says, to have remained where I was, to work from inside to change the things that I feel so strongly about. Believe me, I have tried and failed," he says. The church councils and synods, these are the ruling bodies of the Church of England, he writes, are permeated by activists who each have a single issue, often faddish agenda, whether it be about cultural correctness, climate change, identity politics, multiculturalism, which actually encourages communities to live separately, or critical race theory, religion, gender, a neo-Marxist theory developed to create conflict by dividing people into victims and villains. End quote, according to the Daily Mail. Now, I think, bless him, there's a touch of naivety about Dr. Nazir Ali's words. The truth, and I used to be a Catholic, not that I'm any expert, but the truth is that the Catholic Church, I discovered, is as influenced by radical activists as the Church of England is. I mean, just look at the state of the Catholic Church in Germany, for example, and it's been in the news a great deal recently. It's almost an open schism with the Vatican over, the LGBTQ issue and many other issues too. For the moment, the Vatican is holding the line, but for how much longer? So I think the poor bishop is going to find, in reality, these same issues that he faced in the Church of England very much alive within the Roman Catholic Church. A lot of people, particularly in the West, obviously wanting to change the Church to approve of certain things which the Church doesn't approve of. So the question is, should God come first? Well, I think authentic faith says yes. Because if religion is true, then it's true about everything, about all of our lives, our politics, our relationships with people, about everything. If religion is false, then it is irrelevant, and we must dismiss it. So, of course, God, if religion is true, God must come first. And by that I mean we shouldn't look primarily to social approval and acceptance from people in social media or from the Daily Mail or the BBC, whichever media or cultural power exists in our world, exerting pressures on us to conform to their latest agendas. And these agendas, as we all know, are constantly developing and changing and evolving. They're not static. So what is required of us to believe today might be very different in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. And goodness knows what new taboos today will be required of us to approve of tomorrow or the next day. So if we fix our eyes on social approval, we cannot be religious, in my view. Either God comes first, or we just give it all up. So I applaud the bishop, the former bishop, for his instincts there to hold on to truth, even though I may not agree with all his beliefs. But I think he has the right intuition about religion, just despite my disagreements with him on some details. So just wanted to share with you those thoughts. Till next time.